Welcome to the recap show on the Baseball Awakening podcast with Geoff Rottmayer. Today we will discuss the lessons learned and the action items from yesterday's interview.
Hey guys, Geoff Rottmayer here with the Baseball Awakening recap show, where I share with you the biggest takeaways I got from my conversation with Dustin Pease, as well as how I plan to implement what I've learned with my players that train with me in my academy in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And again, as I always say, we want to hear from you because different things mean different things to different people. So it'd be interesting to see how you interpreted something that Dustin said or something that I'm going to say here today. And I'll make a show where I'm reading these emails because we can all learn something from it. So my email is going to be Geoff, Geoff, at baseballawakening.com. So send me your thoughts, comments, or feedback. In a time where we are so focused on velocity, and believe me, I like velocity as much as the next guy, but I also believe there needs to be more balance. That's what this is about, man. This is about the current moment, the present moment, when you're standing on that mound trying to get hitters out. Locating your pitches is going to be extremely important. Understanding where your ball's going is important. Understanding how your ball was moving is important. These are the things that are going to allow you to advance in this game as a pitcher. Velocity, certainly develop it. We develop it at my place, but we also spend a good amount of time trying to get the baseball to a certain location. The way you do this is by throwing and throwing a lot. It's just like anything else. The way you get better at hitting a curveball is hitting a lot of curveballs. You get better at fielding ground balls, you field more ground balls. To get better at throwing, you need to throw, and you need to throw a lot to find a consistent release point. Dustin grew up understanding that command was going to be a top priority for him to advance in the game. And if you look at his career, he's had a pretty successful career throughout his youth days and his pro days. So there's definitely something to be said about being able to locate pitches to get guys out and to have an opportunity to go as far as he did despite not having or being one of the hardest throwers in the game. But he realized young that he was going to have to throw and throw a lot to be able to command the baseball like he wanted. It was nothing for him to go out and throw 300 pitches or have a sole focus on hitting one target, and until he reached his goal, how many times he wanted to hit it, no matter how long it took him to do it, how many pitches it took him. This is some crazy determination. And I've had one kid like this that trained with us. He just wanted to be a good pitcher, and he threw pretty hard for his age. But he was determined to hit his spot with all of his pitches, and he got really good at it. This kid threw a lot of pitches to make that happen. He threw a lot of flat ground to make it happen. The kid just threw a baseball a lot and got good at doing what he wanted to do with it. But a lot like Dustin, he made it a priority. So I think that's going to be the key, is making, your ability to throw the ball where you want it a priority. This kid worked through his velocity program, and he got up to 90 before he left high school. But he understood, and he bought into what he needed to do at the present moment to get guys out, and that was to be able to locate and change speeds. So, and again, that's Dustin's message. You're gonna have to show up to the ballpark with what you have, and what you have is what you have for the day. And trying to let your ability to move the ball around the zone and met with hitter timing, it's going to be the key to showing up on game days. I went on to ask Dustin to share with me his process of getting started with guys. And he shared with me that they're looking at the deficiencies first, deficiencies in the movement pattern, and work on correcting that first, which I think it's important that he shared that, because there's kind of this misconception in thinking that one doesn't care too much about mechanics, and it's all about just throwing and throwing and throwing. and you develop what you have, it'll develop itself. And that's kind of the thought process too on the velocity end. But there's kind of this misconception that, the people who are more sold command or velocity focused, that's all they care about, not so much on the mechanics. So, but he shared with us the experience that he had with having a funky set of mechanics, but he was able to repeat the movement pattern. So to him, it's about being able to move the body in a way that's repeatable and again, throwing a lot to a certain location. And then he went on and he explained, and I love what he said. He said, the sole focus needs to be throwing the baseball to a location, not just throwing the ball. This is something that, I stress to our guys all the time. You can get better at locating during catch. Put your focus in on throwing the ball to a location. There's a lot of things you can focus on and get good at during catch. When you're on the receiving end, you can work on picking the ball up out of the partner's hand. You can work on tracking the ball, seeing it early. This can help you with hitting. This can help you with fielding. You can track the ball. You can throw the ball. There's so many things that you can work on during catch that can improve your area and can improve other areas of your game. So I think catch, play, play catch, throwing program, whatever you want to call it, a very underutilized activity in terms of all the things that you can do with it. And you play catch every single day. So you can improve as much in a lot of different areas just by playing catch the right way or throwing, whatever you want to call it. But kids have to be taught this, and I think this is going to be the topic for tomorrow's show. But anyways, you need to put your focus on throwing the baseball to a target and track your ability to hit that target. This is something that I stress all the time and will continue to stress because guys get lazy during their playing catch, time. Later on in the conversation, I went on to ask Dustin how he coaches a player to manage the conversation of a coach telling him to do X, Y, Z when he's so comfortable with his mechanics, and now he's just trying to get guys out. And I asked every coach, I always ask this question because it's a conversation that every coach has, and I think it's interesting to hear other coaches' perspective and how they coach their players to manage these conversations. Players are going to have coaches that they trust. And those coaches probably worked extremely hard to gain the player's trust. This coach has taken the time to understand him, to know him, to teach him his mechanics, to understand his mechanics, pitch grip, or whatever it is. And with that, it got the best out of him. And he's seeing what he's doing is working, and he got confidence. The quickest way to shock a kid's confidence is to make him do something outside of what he's working on and what he's comfortable with. Especially if you haven't taken time to see how a kid executes. I think more coaches need to accept what players are doing and let them fail and then make some suggestions instead of just spewing things out right away. For me in my academy, when guys come to me for the first time, I always ask the pitcher, what are your biggest issues that you think or have been told? And then we'll film it. And then I'll also talk mindset with them. So the combination of them telling me what they think they're doing, we filming it, and then understanding the mindset, it kind of gives the big picture of what's going on. A lot of times you get a kid moving better and change his thought process, you'd be amazed how much the mechanics kind of clean up on their own. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't coach mechanics, but I like to film and continue to film, work on moving better, and then execute drills that will coach a desired movement. But I think we tend to react too fast in terms of seeing something that you don't like and making a kid, change something. Especially if you're not having the conversation explaining why we are doing everything that we're getting ready to do. When a player comes to me and he says, hey, my coach said I need to do X, Y, Z, my first question is always why. I'm curious why, because maybe they caught something that I didn't. And, so what happened? What did you do to make them make that suggestion? And like Dustin said, I tell them to be respectful and just kind of go on and keep doing what you're doing. And I always say, if you can, grab the coach, pull him aside, and see if he can explain himself and tell you why you're doing what you're doing. And I think most coaches are willing to take the time to explain. But I've seen coaches that just said, because I said so. Coaches, trust me, if you're a guy that said, because I said so, you just lost all trust of that player. And gaining trust of your player needs to be a top priority of the coach. And you blew it by telling them, because I said so. So now later on in the conversation, Dustin shared with us his pressure testing protocol. And I like how he structured it. And it's kind of amazing. I tried it since my conversation with Dustin. We've been doing a lot of the testing, the pressure testing stuff that he kind of gave me some ideas on. And, it's interesting when you watch it, you can see some kids when it comes to the testing time, they tighten up and the heart rate goes up. And so it's a really interesting thing to observe. And so I was able to see, who need maybe more of the mental talk or the breathing technique, and who can handle the pressure and deliver. So the interesting thing to watch, and we're going to do a lot more of it, to include, hitting too. We'll figure out some pressure testing for hitting as well. So I was glad that he kind of shared that. And then I went on and asked him, we're going into bullpen, we're throwing a lot. Can you kind of talk about the intensity level? And he said something that I agree with. A lot of kids, for whatever reason, because it's boring, they just don't want to go slow before they go fast. And you must go slow and coordinate the movement to execute a task before you can turn it up and go max effort. Now, I do think you need days where you need to work on max effort throws. And in my definition of max effort throws, it's different than what's kind of currently out there. But that's a different conversation for a different time. But I think you need more days where you lower the intensity and focus on repeating the movement and getting the ball to a location. Slow and easy, and the better you get at it, you can add more intensity. And then every once in a while, go ahead and add those max effort days. I later went on and asked Dustin about focal point, and he does have a section in his book. It's a great book, and I would highly recommend it. So check it out on locatenation.com. Locate with a K, nation.com. But a lot of kids struggle with this concept. They struggle with looking anywhere but the glove. So you have to coach this and remind them. And they have to be able to do the same thing in games. That's tough. They have a tough time doing it in bullpen, and then you ask them to do it in games. But I think it's a pretty important part of the puzzle, using your eyes to make adjustments and understanding where you need to throw to play off, some of the movement that you have. So some days your pitches are going to work better than others. So you got to mess around with the focal point, because there's going to be a different focal point for a different day based on how your pitches are working. But kids have to be taught this, and they have to be reminded often to think about this process. And, if you listen to some of my other conversations, you'll notice that I tend to kind of play a little stupid on the conversation on the topic of visualization. And it's because I want to hear what other coaches' thought process are on it. And I think visualization is very important. I mean, really important. Dr. Bill Harrison, he called it visual thinking. But I think you are able to pre-play something or replay something and have that in your mind prior to anything happening. It is one of the best ways to kind of keep yourself in the present moment and keep yourself in focusing on what you want to have happen. The positive mental imagery, Dustin calls it. I tell our guys, I try, at least tell them, look, you need to focus on some of your best at bats or some of your best outing, or shoot, maybe it was just one pitch. Pre-play and replay the heck out of it. See it, feel it, focus on what it was like, try to remember it, and do it over and over and over. Throwing pitches and executing it, and then being at the plate, for your at bat, it's all about trusting yourself and trusting your stuff and trusting your work. So if you can visualize and maintain the positive mental imagery, you're going to you're going to develop some really good habits that will no doubt help you with your performance over time. When I later asked about developing game plans, I think Dustin nailed it when he said that if you cannot really locate your pitches, then it's going to be kind of tough to develop a game plan. And the guys that are really good, they have game plan. But the guys that are really good can also throw the ball where they want it. They can make strike, they can make balls, they can make balls strike, they can make strike balls. So this comes with making it a priority, though. If you can do this with velocity, then that's great. But when it comes to the here and now, the only way you can execute a game plan really is to be able to put the ball where you want it. So that's where the whole location factor comes into play. But then I went on and asked, I said, hey, let's talk about, a player that comes in and he doesn't have his stuff one day. And, I love what Dustin said. He went on and explained that there are so many different factors that come into play when a pitcher isn't working one day. So it's not always the mechanic part. This is where most coaches kind of default to. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's not. You got to understand the big picture when trying to figure out when something doesn't work. And you know what? Sometimes some things don't work, and that's fine. It happens to the best of them. But the key is they keep executing, and they keep finding ways to get guys out. And that's what separates those guys, the guys that can persevere and push through even though they don't have their best stuff. So my biggest takeaway was, yes, you want to develop velocity, but you want to make location a priority, making it a priority every single time you throw a baseball. When you're playing catch, give your partner a target, have him give you a target. So, with us at our academy, we tend to throw a lot already. So we're going to keep doing that. We already tend to throw at a certain location, so we're going to keep doing that. But I think the thing that I really liked that we started adding was the pressure testing, and it's been pretty telling for us and the guys. So all in all, man, I'm a big fan of Dustin's message. We use his book, so make sure you check out his book at locatenation.com. That's location with a K. So, again, I would encourage you guys to go back and listen to the conversation. Also listen to the very last thing when I asked about his advice for guys who want to be more location focused. So just a great conversation, lots of nuggets. So let me know your thoughts and your feedback. Email me at Geoff, Geoff, at baseballawakening.com. Thanks a lot for tuning in.